All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the broadcast. This is the Monday, January 30th, 2017 edition of the broadcast. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Thank you for being with us here for another edition of the show. We've got a lot of various news items and topics of discussion to get into here with you on the show tonight. So everybody strap in, get ready. We're going to be covering a lot of different topics and issues here. And boy, oh boy. Oh man, everybody out there is losing their fucking minds, aren't they? Let's just get that out of the gates right away. I'm sure many of you are probably feeling right now the same way I am, which is sanity seems to be something that's very hard to find right now. People are losing their minds, and I just love sitting back and I mean, really. At some point, you just got to sit back and just laugh at this and watch these idiots tear each other apart because it's fucking hilarious. And, I've spent many years trying to keep people from falling for this stuff. And, the thing is, I've done my best. I've done my job. The sad reality is that you're never going to reach all the idiots and the morons out there, no matter how hard you try. And, you just have to let go. You have to do the best work you can do, try the hardest as you can, and then the rest you got to let go. Otherwise, you're going to wind up just like these other idiots, losing your mind, going crazy. I mean, it's just hilarious. And of course, Trump has set everybody on fire right now with the whole immigration ban and Muslim ban thing. And, it's just comical to me. It really is. Because this kind of thing is not the first time. This is not the first time this kind of thing's happened. But people so quickly forget. It's like, people have no memories anymore. Things just go down the memory hole and they're lost and gone. And then people forget stuff, forget stuff that happened 50, 60, 70 years ago. I'm talking about stuff that happened 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, man. People just forget about it, I mean, people forget. Some people forget. Some people don't even know. Many people do know this. I'm sure most of you know this. But what I'm saying is, in general, a lot of people out there in the general public don't even know or forget that during World War II in this country, Japanese Americans, we're talking about citizens. We're not talking about people who were trying to immigrate here illegally or anything like that. Were literally rounded up and put into internment camps in this country. There were some even right here in Dallas, where I live, where this happened. Rounded up and put into internment camps during World War II. So, I mean, this is, again, I'm completely not left or right. I don't support any of these phony control puppets, and that's all they are. They advance the agenda so the next person can be brought in to be even worse. That's what it's all about. All the things Clinton did enabled Bush to come in. All the things Bush did enabled. You can even go farther back than that if you want. I mean, we can keep going. It's one continual chain of this, and that's why each one of these guys is the enabler for the next one. And that, again, that goes right in hand to hand with what I've talked about and proven here and shown the connections too many times. And that is that whether it's left, whether it's right, it doesn't matter. All these candidates are phony and controlled, and they're all each one about advancing the agenda for the next person. Everybody wanted, after Bush, everybody wanted anything. This set the stage perfectly for the Obama administration to come in and do the things that they did. And everybody was going nuts then, all the right wingers, everybody losing their minds, just like the left wingers are losing their minds now. And it's all about trying to get, again, the people divided against each other so they don't unite against them, the powers that be. That's the main thing. But, everybody was crying about the end of the world when Obama was, first came in office. And people forget that he had a similar type of ban against Iraqis and whatnot. That just goes down the memory hole. So I'm not defending this decision by any means, but my question is especially for people out there, like the Trump and Alex Jones Kool-Aid drinkers. My question for them is what are you going to do now, you hypocrites? Because, all of you that got behind Trump and supposedly are, in the Alex Jones camp and supposed truthers and the rest of this stuff. I mean, let me put it to you like this. I'd love to know. I'd love to hear. I just wouldn't dare listen to him or go to his website, but I'm sure I'd just love to hear what Alex Jones is saying about all this, because, you can really only have one standpoint or the other on this. You either believe that 9/11 was a quote unquote inside job, or, not what they told us it was, which of course we all know it wasn't, or you believe that Muslim extremists had a hand in 9/11, want to kill us for our freedoms, as Bush said, and are truly a threat. You can't have both of those beliefs simultaneously. It's impossible. Otherwise, you're just a bullshit hypocrite. So, these people need to pick one. Either you believe 9/11 was perpetrated by not 19 Arab hijackers with box cutters, or you believe that it was carried out by these type of people and that they're the threat, and of course Trump's ban is justified. Either way, all of this, you have to bring it down to what it's really all about, and that is, of course, to further divide and conquer and to further push the separation so that a new form of government can come in, a new outside force can take over the United States once they bring down the government. That's what all of this is about. All these signs are all about bringing down the United States so that a form of government and a form of control can take over, whether that's, the crown taking us back over, or whatever, into the world power structure. But again, don't get it twisted. These fucking people like Alex Jones and others will try to tell you that Trump is, anti New World Order or whatever it may be. These steps are 100% bringing this in. That's what all of this is about. And these idiots are so confused and so manipulated by the media and by emotion that they are being blinded to the fact that Trump is just as much a part and a puppet of helping to bring in the world power structure as Obama or anybody else has been. And that's what this is about. This is creating the argument that borders and nationality and all the rest of this stuff is an old construct. Is you notice how they bring up this argument. This is the argument you always hear, well, everybody's immigrants. We're all immigrants in the United States. Well, that is like the most preposterous, retarded argument ever. Because, again, that's either you want one or the other. You either want to have each nationality and country to have national identity, and or you don't. So which one is it? You don't get to have both. I mean, literally, you could say that if that's true, if this whole argument of, well, we're all immigrants, you can't say that those people can't come in and be immigrants because, wait a minute. My family is not, and a lot of people out there are not immigrants. Maybe fucking hundreds of years ago, but we're talking about right now, today. People who are immigrants to another country. This whole argument, I mean, literally, if we're going to just say everybody's immigrants, if that's the argument, then what needs to be done is that any sort of nationality and any of the rest of this stuff, and of course, this is going to sound, when I say it, it's going to sound like a globalist agenda, but of course, that's my point. Because if you want to break this down to, well, everybody's immigrants, well, you could say that nobody in any country, anywhere on earth, has any right to be there, because no country on earth is populated with people who have been there from time immemorial. Literally. I mean, if you want to believe, even if you believe what mainstream science and history and the rest of it tell us about, and of course I don't, but if you believe the fairy tale, the yarn they spin to us about Native Americans coming across the Bering Strait land bridge, well, I mean, technically that makes them immigrants too, right? So you can't even make that argument and say, well, the Native Americans, they're really the only ones that have the right to be here. Well, no, not really. All people across the whole face of the planet. Yes, you could say that eventually those people that took root in those areas eventually created, what became these individual nationalities or whatever else. But this whole idea that this whole argument of, well, we were all immigrants, blah, 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 that's horseshit. All of this is horseshit. I mean, let's just get that out of the way right now. But all of this is being designed so that eventually the argument can be made, well, we just need to do away with borders and nationalities and all the rest of this stuff. And of course, that sets the stage for global governance and, a set head of world rulers that rule all over all lands across the world. And that, of course, is the epitome of what arguments about global government, globalism, the rest of this have always been. But of course, now the right is now spinning that Trump is somehow against that. When anybody who's been studying this stuff and covering it and researching it for any amount of time can look at this and know exactly what his plans are. Because remember that Trump is not, Trump has no idea of what the grand master plan is. None of these guys do. They're just puppets, and they're doing what they think is their own actions, when in reality they wouldn't even be there in those positions to make those decisions if they weren't installed and allowed to be there, because we all know what they do with people they don't want in those positions. They don't let them get very far, do they, JFK? And a lot of people have been asking me, about Yemen. I can get lots of questions about that. Because I remember back when, and we've even got listeners out there who remember me covering this, and I've gotten emails about it. But people were saying, yeah, I remember when, when Obama first got elected, you were talking about on your show about Yemen and about Gary Vay and the whole Ark of the Covenant and Sheba's Palace being in Yemen, and how, these... well, the news media was putting out these reports and stuff about, 8-year-old kids with AK-47s with Smurf stickers on them. And, it's so terrible because they have young kids over there training with weapons. Well, what they don't tell you is that those people in that country have been trained generationally at a young age for centuries to protect what's there. The Palace of Sheba, supposedly the Ark of the Covenant is rumored to be there. They've had warships parked off the coast of Yemen since around 2008, 2009. The type of battleships and whatnot that are only deployed during wartime are there, parked off the coast. I mean, have been there, yet no war or anything else has been actively declared in that area. And so as soon as Trump was inaugurated, we started having Yemen airstrikes again, just like when Obama first got inaugurated. So I've been getting lots of questions and people saying, was this just, is this a rite of passage or something? Is this like, what, they bring in somebody new and they just, make them bomb Yemen first and foremost? Well, yeah, in a way, yeah. I mean, in a way, I guess you could say that is kind of a rite of passage. What they do is, think about it like this. Go back and look at JFK. JFK wouldn't pull the trigger on Cuba, right? He wouldn't pull the trigger on Vietnam. I mean, they were at every turn, he was trying to avoid war, conflict, death, or anything else. And on top of everything else, especially after the Bay of Pigs and his, firing of all the big sacred cows of the CIA and the intelligence community, it was, that's the thing. It wasn't just one thing that got Kennedy killed. It was, all those things. Basically, his refusal to be the puppet dictator that he didn't realize he was, or was, that they wanted him to be, until he got in there and they started making decisions. He thought he was in charge. They start making decisions. CIA starts making decisions over his head. And of course, he got pissed, started going after him, and they murdered him. Well, yeah, as far as the rite of passage thing, I think that is it. They, somebody like Trump, they want to give them, what they consider to be, I mean, you got to consider, they can't just go in and wipe everybody out in Yemen and go in there. That's what they want to do. Notice how it's been real quiet on the Yemen front, really, until right when Trump came back in again. And, yeah, they want to see if these guys are going to have, when they come in, if they're going to have the nuts to pull the trigger or not. That's really what it is. And they give them certain zones, certain areas, they consider, I guess, easy targets. Because if they can't get them to pull the trigger on something like that immediately out of the gates when they come in, they're going to have a real big problem trying to get them to pull the trigger on big time deaths and wars and the rest of it. So absolutely, I think that's what they do is they're testing these these new puppet dictators when they come in, and testing to see if they're going to have the balls to pull the trigger or not. So that definitely has continued here with Trump. My point is that the further people get, it's just hilarious to me. All the stuff that was going on during the Obama administration, and people just going back to sleep, and now all of a sudden people are waking back up again, and they're getting wanting to be activists again when they've been asleep for 8 years, acting like none of this stuff, like this thing hasn't marched and soldiered on. Like they honestly believe that somehow the march towards the supremacy of the global power structure somehow stopped for 8 years during Obama, and it's just not true. It's as ridiculous as a fact as believing that any of these people that get elected to presidents and leaders are actually elected by the people and are not predetermined, pre-decided, and pre-installed by the people who have the agendas that they want to push forward. And it's always about enabling them to bring in somebody that's ultimately worse. That's what Trump's whole thing is. He is going to be the justification. You thought Obama was bad. You thought the Clintons were bad. He's going to be the justification for them to bring in something even worse than we've ever seen before from the left wing. But again, all of these left-right discernments are all bullshit anyway, because it is all about serving this global power structure whose ultimate goal is this socialism type of mindset, but not in the way that we've been taught and thought about it. It's the homogenization of all people, and again, the whole doing away with borders and nationality and creating this anger over the Muslim bans and the whatnot is what is going to be the justification later for the left wing to bring in things that are even worse than what they've had before as the justification for not allowing someone like a Trump to come in and do these things again. So one is just the justification for the other to be worse. And I hope that more people out there wake up to this fact and see it. It is sickening. But anyway, we got lots of news and whatnot to get into with you here on the show. Folks, we are flat out of time. We've got less than 48 hours to raise 100% of our operating cost goal here. So we really got to have everybody contributing and kicking whatever they can by at least 2 o'clock Central Standard Time on Wednesday. We don't have any more time than that. So please go to my website, theglobalreality.com, where this broadcast originates from. You can also, if you're listening to this on YouTube, check the little read more section under there. We'll have links to all the fundraisers and everything there as well. We've got an awesome $500 valued prize pack up for grabs for the highest contributor. You can see photos of that up on our Facebook pages, the Global Reality Radio Network Facebook page, as well as the Josh Reeves Radio Talk Show Host Filmmaker Explorer page. All those are up there. And we'll have a special deal. Everybody that contributes $100 by 2 o'clock Central Standard Time on Wednesday will receive a lifetime archive membership to the show if you don't already have that. And you will also get a limited edition signed and numbered DVD or Blu-ray. We won't be selling any signed copies. It will be the only way you can get these of my film, The Spellcasters, once the DVDs and Blu-rays are done. I know everybody's impatient. I'm impatient too. It's taken months longer than it was supposed to. It's out of my hands. It's not in my hands at all. I've gone through 4 or 5 different artists waiting on this artwork to be done. Our last guy, I know he's going to get it done, but he's just, he's had to move and he hasn't had internet, so he's had issues, but it's going to be done. They're going to be done real soon, and we're hoping to have those start shipping out by at least the third week in February. So everybody, please be patient, and everybody who contributes will get a limited edition signed and numbered DVD or Blu-ray once they're released. If you contribute $100, and plus a lifetime membership as well. And if you want to download or something else from the shop, you can just email me and let me know about that. But any amount will help. We just need to reach 100% of our operating costs, or we're not going to be. Not only are we not going to be able to continue, but we're going to lose this studio. I fought so hard to get back in September, and it's this past month of January has been terrible for us. It's not the way I wanted to kick off this year. We got so much work to do and so much to accomplish this year with films and everything else, and but it's just, what are you going to do? Your health is, when your health stuff props up, it's out of your hands. And I, after a week of using this remineralization paste and powder and stuff, I'm feeling a lot better. I still got some pain. I'm not at 100% yet. I'm 85, 90%, but man, it's slowly getting better. And so thanks again to everybody out there for their well wishes. But we're in red alert territory right now. We don't have any longer left, and we haven't got very much in this month because we haven't had as many shows. Yet we've had, each show's in thousands and thousands of listeners. So we just need everybody out there. We can't have people just saying, "Oh, I'm not going to contribute. I'm going to allow somebody else to do it." That's not going to work for us. We're every single month, folks, we find ourselves in this position, which we shouldn't have to. If we just had everybody out there contributing regularly, we would never find ourselves in this position. And I hate it. It drives me crazy, man. I hate the stress of it. I mean, every single month here, I have to worry about whether or not I'm going to be out on the street and homeless, when all it would take is if just every single person out there contributed just something, a small amount, we wouldn't be in these situations anymore. So, again, use the contribution banner if you want to use PayPal. If you don't want to use PayPal, you want to use a credit card or a debit card or a prepaid card, you can. People say, "I don't have a bank account. I don't use PayPal." Well, that's not an excuse. You can go get a prepaid card at a gas station or whatever, prepaid Visa card, and you can use the donate button at my website to do it that way, or you can just send me the card number information, however you want to do it. But we're out of time, and we don't have any grace period. We've got to have our operating cost budget reach 100% by 2 o'clock Central Standard Time on Wednesday. So please go and contribute right now. Last week I mentioned this appearance of Leah Remini on the Conan O'Brien show. In that broadcast that I did I talked about how, these people have spent every piece of work I've done, from the secret rights stuff, the Council for National Policy, to the Lost Secrets of Ancient America stuff for the Rockwall, to now with the Spellcaster stuff with Scientology. At every turn, these people have spent millions of dollars to try to combat the work that I've done, that we do on literal pennies here. And no sooner than I talked about that on the last broadcast, that very night the episode with Conan O'Brien and Leah Remini aired, I had mentioned this article about them sending a letter to Conan O'Brien to try to discredit her. Well, later that night, and I talked about, that watch this stuff, keep your eye on this kind of stuff. You could see little hints and stuff sometimes where they're directed at me without saying my name. Alex Jones is the king of that. He'll make little comments, do stuff all the time. It's absolutely directed at me without saying my name. And in this episode with Leah Remini on Conan O'Brien, I'll have to put this clip up later. I'll take the audio that was from that show that I did that same day and put it up with the clip. I'll do that, put it on YouTube later. But first off, you could tell all the questions, totally canned questions from Conan O'Brien. It was I've been watching Conan since the early 90s, and I don't watch him anymore because I don't have cable. But what I'm saying is, I've seen this dude conduct enough interviews. It was the stiffest, most controlled interview I've ever seen him do with anybody. And in there, as they're making little discussions, he says something about liars or something. And Conan cracks a joke that you can tell was totally staged and pre-written. Cracks a joke about Trump being a Scientologist. And then, laugh it off and move on to anything. again, showing how the left liberal Hollywood, even when they have, and well, I'm not saying Trump is a Scientologist, but if you watch the Spellcasters, you see the obvious connections with him to Scientology, to the Council for National Policy, and how that dovetails into the connections with people like Alex Jones, Jim Mars, and these others that I've fingered connected to the CMP and Scientology as well. But again, you throw in that sly little joke, and then the audience that hears that just takes it, and then anything they hear, they might hear later on about these connections to Trump or Jones or whatever else to Scientology, then they write it off because they've already heard a joke about that. See, it's a sly part of the psychological manipulation, folks. And absolutely, that had everything to do with my work and the stuff that I've pointed out. And I was just sitting there on the show talking about how they've spent millions of dollars to combat what we do over here with pennies. Again, the absolute reason why you've got to support our work, folks, and keep us going, because nobody else out there, it puts out the information I have and have been putting out for the last 10 years. Nobody knew about the Council for National Policy, folks, until I came on the scene and talked about it and brought it up. Nobody. It was not something. Now it's become a part of the nomenclature. That was all due to me. And, it's in this time of where everybody is divided and conquered to the point there is literally nobody left who's going to bring you the real truth of this stuff and warn you about what's coming and what these guys are really going to do. Because, I mean, any sort of objective journalism or truth in journalism went out the window long, long, long ago, and it's only becoming worse and going to continue to become worse, of course, with the new regime now in power. Should you be worried about the death asteroid headed towards Earth? By now, you've probably heard about 2016 WF9. Everybody's freaking out about this death asteroid. And if the predictions hold up, it really is something to worry about, except, as you might have guessed, the predictions do not actually hold up. There's really only one person saying WF9 is the sweet meteor of death some people were rooting for in the 2016 election. A Russian astronomer claims that the asteroid is actually a piece of Nibiru. There it is. Yet, folks, what have I told you about this? 2017 was going to be the year. Every turn already, barely at the end of the first month of 2017, and how many stories have we already had about Planet 9, Nibiru, the rest of this? What, you might ask, is Nibiru? Why, it's a planet we were told about by Nancy Leader, a woman who claims to be in telepathic contact with aliens from Zeta Reticuli. This would be a good point to bring up that the Nibiru cataclysm was supposed to have happened in 2003. But really, are you surprised? People predict asteroids are about to wipe us all out constantly. It was supposed to happen in 2016, 2015, and 2014. The problem with these internet conspiracy freakouts is that they're hiding a genuine, serious issue. Joseph Nuth, a NASA scientist, said just a month ago that if we found an asteroid heading for Earth, we wouldn't have the tools to stop it. We need 5 years lead time, and we would simply spot the asteroid too late to do anything about it. So while the crackpots may be wrong about this particular asteroid, it's worth noting even NASA thinks they've got something to worry about. See, you notice how many, and that's the end of the story. You see how many contradictions are in that? Or in that story again. That's a great example of cognitive dissonance, and another great example of, again, just the double think, the whole Orwellian level of this stuff. No, anybody talks about Nibiru or killer asteroids or any of that shit, they're kooks, crack nuts, crazies. The world's not coming to win. But asteroids are a threat, and if we did find one, if we didn't find it within 5 years, we'd be fucked anyway. So they don't deny the threat of asteroids. Of course, as I've talked about many times, the whole, going back to the Warner von Braun prediction, first the threat will be communism, then third world crazy terrorists, then asteroids, then the final card is they'll tell us non-hostile extraterrestrials that actually want to help us and help us evolve are actually here to destroy us, and then we have to weaponize space to, to wipe them out. And of course, that's what this is all about. So I find it interesting that they would even take the time to even address. I've talked about it many times. I mean, every year for I don't know how many years the world's been supposed to end. Nibiru, Planet 9, Planet X, asteroids, alien invasion, the fucking, the end times, apocalypse, the return of Jesus, the return of Quetzalcoatl. I mean, but I think that is, of course, a part of the whole crying wolf mentality that Alex Jones and many others engage in. This whole idea of constantly causing, an uproar, constantly crying wolf. Everybody gets up on arms and comes running, and then there's nothing there. Like he was telling people, folks, the bird flu is going to shut down America by tomorrow. If you don't get out, you're not going to be getting out. That's another thing about that wall, too. Everybody's up in arms about that fucking wall. Look, man, that wall ain't there to keep nobody out. They've had open border policy in this country for decades. That wall is not there to keep anybody out. Much as all you people are losing your minds on the left and the right, on all sides of this, that wall is there to keep anybody out. That wall is going to be there to try to keep motherfuckers in. Okay? That's what everybody needs to be concerned about. But nobody seems to be even bringing that up or concerned about it at all. Because how many years have I told you, folks, what they've done over there in the Middle East and in Iraq and the rest of the stuff, the eventual goal is to do it here. And you think that it's about making it hard to get in. Nuh-uh. It's about making it hard to get out. That's the whole issue. And of course, if you introduce something else, some other X factor in there, like a staged alien invasion or whatever else it may be, you could see how this thing has more than one usage. That's what nobody's thinking about, folks. It's not about keeping anybody out. It's about keeping people in. A cluster of UFOs was filmed hovering over the border between the U.S. and Mexico, but the footage has mysteriously disappeared from the internet. A 14-minute-long film showed a group of 7 or 8 lights dancing above a border control post in Tijuana, Mexico. The sight was so unusual that border staff even abandoned their posts to watch the UFOs light up the night sky. The clip shows cars pulling to halt and beeping their horns as drivers and passengers watch the objects overhead. See, even they're flying around that down there by the fucking where the wall is going to be out now. Even the fucking aliens are like watching. They're like, oh yeah, build that motherfucker. Make it harder for people to get out once we come down and start harvesting you assholes for food. Which, of course, I'm not saying is going to happen, but you never know, right? Remember V? Original TV show, man? I remember watching that with my dad when I was a kid. It was my favorite. Never would have dreamed that, maybe that show wasn't too far off, Reptilian aliens coming down and sucking us dry of water and heart rounding up. Just notice how they went after the scientists first? That was genius. There's a new show on TV that's taken a lot from that. Colony, I think is what it is. They're in like season 2 now. Pretty interesting. They haven't really showed you what the aliens look like. It's something frustrating about shows. I hate shows like that. They're supposedly about aliens, but yet you never really fucking see an alien at all. You never really, it's just one episode after another where they build it up or whatever. But that's what they do in that show, Colony. They build a giant fucking wall. The aliens come in and build. It's like they do Trump's job for him in this fucking show. They come in and build this fucking gigantic wall. And there was a part, I think it was towards the end of maybe in the last episode of last season. They actually killed they call them the hosts. Isn't a host someone that feeds off of somebody else? So that probably tells you where they're going with this show. But there was a quote from last season where they talked about something about one of the hosts, one of the aliens got killed. And they were like, well, what do they do? What are they going to do if they find out this person was killed? And this lady says, well, let me put it to you like this. It just brought my attention because, anything that mentions Dallas. She's like, well, let me put it to you like this. 3 of our hosts were killed during the initial invasion in Dallas. That city is now a sheet of glass. Like, holy fuck. And then there's one of the newer episodes, somebody says something about, yeah, my family lives in Texas, or they did. Very, very interesting that they're having this show now at this time. And it's, it was on even before Trump was inaugurated. But just the fact these aliens built this big wall, and, it got me thinking about this idea of, the advantages of having something to trap people into a country and building it under the guise of keeping out illegal immigrants, man. Really rather frightening once you start to think about it. Delete your antivirus, says ex-Firefox developer who claims it's worthless. Although installing antivirus is one of the first steps that that most would recommend you do with a new PC build. If you still use antivirus software, you're just out of your mind. I haven't used that shit in forever. And I've told this story before. I'll tell it again. But now they're finally admitting something I've known since 2001. And that is that not only are these worthless, but the companies that make these antivirus programs themselves, most of the time, actually build in vulnerabilities and build in things to the software that actually makes you get viruses. And I've told this to people for many years, and they can't wrap their minds around it. And I'll tell you how I found out about it. I've told this story on the show before. This goes back to right around the time of 9/11. I was working for a software company at that time, had a really good job. And of course, after 9/11, they shipped my job off to India, as they did with many people's jobs. Is, you could pay somebody 10 cents an hour to do the job they were paying me big bucks to do or whatever. But I remember going to work the day after 9/11 and just upset and fucking, pissed off and mad because I knew what it was. I knew this was another, just from my years of studying Kennedy and the JFK assassination. I mean, immediately on the day, as soon as it was happening, the second tower hadn't even come down yet. And I'm already telling people, look, I know what this is. Don't believe anything you hear about this. This is bullshit. This is like Kennedy all over again. You watch, they'll have the patsy, the scapegoat already lined up in no time. They'll have his name. They'll be putting pictures of him up. And then they started doing that with bin Laden. Right after I said it, But I used to work at this. It was like this big building, and there was a bunch of different accounts. I worked for one software company, but there was, 10 or 15 other ones within this, big fucking massive cubicle farm with no windows. You're just in there for fucking 8-10 hours a day or whatever. Don't see the outside. The only thing they had where you could really go outside besides the parking lot was like this metal cage, the cage outside for the smokers. Like they keep the fucking cigarette smokers in a goddamn cage. Anyway, I was out there on my break or whatever, and I was just sitting by myself, fucking pissed off, thinking about the events of 9/11, as most everybody was on everybody's mind at that point. And this guy worked over, and he worked for one of the, I think it was McAfee or one of those big antivirus companies. He was like, "Hey man, what's going on? You all right? What's wrong?" And I was started talking about. I was like, "Well," I said, "Man, you probably don't want to fucking talk to me right now." I was like, "I'm not really in the mood to talk to anybody about any of this horse shit that's going on because it's all bullshit. It's all lies. This isn't fucking being done by Arab hijackers and the rest of this stuff, man. It's like Kennedy all over again, and people just buy what they're sold because if it came off of TV, it must be true." And he was, didn't get He didn't seem shocked by any of the stuff I was saying at all, which was shocked me, you know. Because I'm telling you, man, especially back then, there was, just talking about, even mentioning or even bringing up that 9/11 might not have been what we were told it was, especially the day after, man, that nobody wanted to hear it. Nobody wanted to hear it. I don't give a fuck what anybody says about, this, that, and the other. Nobody wanted to hear it. And so, I was telling him about this. He said, well, he's like, I don't doubt that at all. I don't doubt that it's probably something different than what we've been told. Not at all. I mean, it's that kind of stuff happens all the time. I'm like, wow, I was shocked, He was like, let me give you an example. He's like, I work for this software company, right? I work for this antivirus software. He's like, do you know what a lot of my job consists of? I'm like, what? He's like, a lot of the viruses and whatnot that get put out there, which of course you have to, have our program to fight against. We write those. And put those out there. So we're selling people on this idea that they're buying this product to help them from their computer and protect their computer against viruses and malware and whatever else. But we're designing the software. That's why you have to buy it every year. If we just, if somebody just made an antivirus program, there would be no reason to update it every year. We could never sell our product again. We'd sell our product once and that would be it. So we constantly have to have threats and things that are perceived as threats. Otherwise, the money stops flowing and we don't, we can't continue. He's like, that's kind of, a microcosm for what you're talking about there with government and 9/11. I'm like, man, that's exactly it. And I had no idea about that. I was like, no bullshit, huh? He's like, no bullshit, dude. He's like, we write vulnerabilities into these programs. We got to have something to be able to justify the existence of our program, of our product. And I never forgot that conversation, and it always stuck in my mind because, that was something I didn't even think about. And so ever since then, I've been telling people this about antivirus softwares and the rest of it. And of course, everybody just thinks it's a conspiracy theory. But I literally got it from the horse's mouth back in 2001. Here we are, 2017. It's taken this long, 16 years, and finally they're admitting that to us. Lance Bass reveals on podcast that Leah Remini was his Scientology sponsor. Former NSYNC member Lance Bass opened up about Scientology with comedian Heather McDonald on an episode of her podcast, Juicy Scoop. Bass revealed his brief involvement with the controversial religion and who his famous sponsor was. He admitted, quote, I was approached by Leah Remini, ironically. At the time, Bass confessed he and his ex-boyfriend were talked into getting help for their relationship. He said Leah was like, I want to bring you in and introduce you, and it's really great couples counseling course. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because that goes against the whole, can't be gay in Scientology thing. Why they've spent so many years covering up Tom Cruise and Travolta being butt pirates with their one-eyed scallywags. And here is Lance Bass talking about, now that's interesting. Because Leah Remini talks, if you listen to her talk, she talks about how when she was in Scientology, she was doing everything by the book and not doing anything that would go against their policies, but that also shows you the brazen nature of their recruitment and how they will then, once they get them in, once they get the hooks in, that's what they try to do. They get people, oh no, we accept people. They'll tell you that point, like, oh, we don't care if people are gay. But if you go and read, L. Ron Hubbard's words on this stuff, and of course, he had a son who was gay, and I talk about that in the Spellcasters. He was, of course, suicided in a way that made it look like it was an accident, which of course it wasn't. ASU scientists find advanced geometry no secret to prehistoric architects in U.S. Southwest. Ha! Oh, again, you motherfuckers are just now catching up to the stuff I've done in the Lost Secrets of Ancient America, and of course, trying to downplay it yet again. as I discuss in my Lost Secrets of Ancient America film, specifically in Volume 2, Native Americans, folks, didn't even have written language. And they absolutely did not have a knowledge of the sexagesimal base 60 numerical system, which is the basis for all the geometry and architect and all the ancient sites across the United States. They flat didn't have a knowledge of it. But now, of course, after the change in this country, again, I've talked about this many times, but prior to Manifest Destiny and all this stuff, the Native Americans are savages. They've created nothing that is worth saving. And in actual fact, because of course this is what the information shows, is that there was a separate group of people called the mound builders who built these ancient sites and then seeded these cultures. And then once the justification for that was to wipe out the Native Americans, take over their lands, once they got in there and started excavating some of these sites, they started realizing, wait a second, folks, this narrative is not going to hold up. Everything's going to come unhinged for us if we continue this. And that was the scientific, it was not just a fringe theory. That was the scientifically accepted fact at that time. After they wiped them all out, got their land, started realizing what they were dealing with, started realizing there was no way in hell they were ever going to be able to sell anybody on the idea that these Native Americans, who we've been told were savages, had nothing worth preserving, could have built these ancient sites. So that's when they turned it around. They did completely away with the mound builders, tried to write that ideology out of history altogether, and then started associating all ancient sites with Native Americans. And of course, I've showed in my work that these people who were here in the ancient past were then later in parts of the Middle East, Iraq, Syria, Samaria, Babylon, Acadia, the whole area there, and also traveled all around the world, setting up and seeding cultures after that. Proof of which lies in places like this, what we're talking about here. What are they talking about? Are they talking about, is this, might be talking about either, Mesa Verde, yeah. Mesa Verde in Colorado, which of course is one of the sites I've talked about that connects to all these other sites. But as has been discovered in the geometry of the ancient sites across the Ohio Valley and across the whole United States, all of these sites, and as the rock wall is as well, aligned to the solstices and the equinoxes, and having this geometry and all the numerology of 666 in there, which of course people equate to the mark of the beast, and which it isn't that in what we're talking about here. It has to do with the Babylonian numerical system for numbering their gods. Of course, the sun, to them, their numerical value for the sun god was 666. That's why all these ancient sites have the alignments across the world to solstices and equinoxes and have the same geometry, but they continue to try to associate this with Native Americans, which absolutely did not have any knowledge of this, so that you don't find out who these ancient sites were actually built by. Imagine you're about to plan and construct a building that involves several complicated geometrical shapes, but you aren't allowed to write down any numbers or notes as you do it. For most of us, this would be impossible. Yet, new research from Arizona State University has revealed that the ancient southwestern Pueblo people, who had no written language or written number system, were able to do just that and use these skills to build sophisticated architectural complexes. Right. This banks on people's sheer uneducation and idiocy and just complete lack of information and knowledge on these subjects. They want us to believe that the Native Americans did all this sophisticated geometry and all this sophisticated architectural stuff just by happenstance, with no ability to measure anything, with no ability to be able to determine even if their architectural plans would work or not. And that, this just shows how incredible the natives really were, because they did all this without any knowledge of anything. Right. Just sheer lies. continued lies and the continued obfuscation of the truth, because the real truth of it and the real admission that, of who these were really built by, it flies right in the face of what they continue to try to cover up, and what they continue to try to cover up over in Iraq and Yemen and the rest of this. The whole justification for all of these wars and everything else is a part of this. And I'm telling you, folks, again, that's exactly the reason why eventually they want to do in the United States what they've done over there. Who knows what's in this country and what's buried under the earth here in the United States that we haven't even uncovered yet? Has been my whole point of the rock wall, while I've tried to get an independent dig going, to get independent documentation and verification of this. It's outside of the History Channel's bullshit cover-up. But again, folks, all of this stuff, none of this stuff can be done without budgets and money to do it. And there's so much of this we could get done and so much we could get uncovered, but, we can barely even keep ourselves afloat here with operating costs every month. So it's just so frustrating, and I have to tell you, the biggest hurdle and obstacle to my work over the last 10 years has not been the powers that be or anybody else. It's been the people themselves who won't buck up, pull up, and support. If you can't get out there, if you can't do the type of work and what stuff that I have been doing here, I get that. But the least you could do is support somebody like me who is making it happen and who has made all the documentary films, all the information, all the research I've put out there, folks. All we need is money, and we could do so much more. We could have 3 films out this year and a boatload of new information out. We just need the money to do it. And I'm certainly not going to sit back and sit idly by while this stuff just gets brought in. No fucking way. No way. I'm going to continue to fight, and I thank those of you out there that do continue to stand up in this fight with me, and we're going to keep doing this regardless. So much left to uncover. We need everybody to contribute, though, folks, and we don't have a lot of time left. We need to reach 100% of our operating cost goal by Wednesday, so go to theglobalreality.com, contribute right now. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Hopefully some of you will contribute by then. We won't have as big much of a hump left in the final 24 hours. Theglobalreality.com is my website. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care.